Hi, my name is Bindu Nair, and this is the second session following the first one. The first one was demonstrating my Rails project URL implementation. And in the second one, I want to share the hiccups that I encountered during implementation and also some of the tips and gotchas that I picked up along the way as it relates to coding in Ruby on Ruby on Rails. So the first problem I encountered was related to migration. We were given a load data migration script that basically had all the static data predefined. We needed to create a migration that referenced that database file, and so that the data would be loaded up into the SQLite database. When I ran that, I realized I got an exception because that script referenced a column that I've forgotten to create in my photos model. So basically, the migration that was automatically created for my photos model was wrong because it was missing a column. The way I got around that problem was to first run db migrate rollback. So this basically rolls back the tables, removes the tables that were already created. And then I went in and um, changed my the model directly to add the column in there. So my active record definition, I changed to create the column that I was missing, and then I ran the db migrate task again. And because the rollback was run previously, the migrate this time ran successfully because it was running from scratch. So that was with migration. So once migration was all done, I wanted to look at the backend schema and verify that I actually see the data that I just loaded. For that, in RubyMine, they ask you to use the databases tool. I couldn't find how to bring up my databases tool, so I had to Google that, which was quick and easy. That's under Tools, Windows, Databases, and then so that's here. So you can go here and actually look at the data. So that's the second one. The third one. Um, so I figured out how to bring up the databases view here, but this view was empty. I did not see a default data source created for my default database. So I did not see my tables by default. So I had to actually configure this data source. And for that, you use alt-enter to create a SQLite data source, and the wizard kind of uh, in my case, warned me that the drivers were missing. I had a link there, thankfully, to install the drivers, which I did, and then I was able to actually look at the tables and see the data. So to do that, I went into here, I went into data source, I went into SQLite, and that's how I created the data source definition there. And then as I started working with the controllers and views, I had to reference back notes and read up a bit. And I have kind of picked up the fact that Ruby favors pluralization in the names of its model and controllers. Because, especially for controllers, it's not required to have the name in plural. But if you have it in plural, then some of the default mappings that you are set up for you for routing gets done automatically. Like I started with naming my controller just user. So then the user slash index had to be was not automatically mapped because I did not have I named my controller singular with the singular name. So in general, I guess it definitely helps us to follow convention and to use plural names, so that if anything, it saves you the headache of having to do anything extra with the routing, especially if you're doing standard mappings to standard URLs. Um, so that's the fourth one. I also had to kind of look around and read up a bit to get my routing syntax correctly for the second URL, which is in this format because it takes an ID parameter. So I had to figure out how to actually define that. So this is how I have it mapped in my implementation. And finally, the gotchas and lessons learned. Uh, like I said, naming conventions, it's good to know. Uh, Sometimes it feels like a hassle to kind of figure all that out at the beginning, but if you take a little bit of time reading that, it always helps. The ERP templating engine that we use in our views, as I found, that has a few different ways of embedding the Ruby code. So you can embed your Ruby code in your view using this block, or you can use one which has an equal to sign right after here. And the difference between that is that if you have this equal to sign here, anything in there is evaluated and actually printed out, and it's printed out. But if there are times when you're just setting a variable that you need to use later in the code, you don't want it printed out to the your HTML. So you would just not use that, because then it's not printed out and it just evaluates your code. So that was a good thing to know. And then I realized that I put more, I use HTML code to kind of iterate through my photos, fetch my comments, and all of that. And that works, as I've demonstrated. But as I looked at some of the samples, I figured out that as your UI gets more complicated, it is a better idea to use the controller to build that logic and do dynamic HTML through code. So that all the template is doing is it's lightweight and it's only substituting the values in HTML. That seems to be what I've seen folks, more advanced users, do out there. So that's something that I have picked up. And in my implementation, I needed to figure out how to concatenate Ruby strings. And I found that there is this mechanism, what they call interpolation. So you can have strings which are bound to variables. And then, so an example of that would be, I wanted to build the username and show a full username that is a concatenation of the first name and the last name. And so this is the interpolation where you can have static strings. This evaluates to the actual variable value, so that you can concatenate strings and constants together into one variable. So that's called interpolation. So that was something useful for me in my implementation. And that kind of wraps up my project demo for Rails. Thank you very much for listening.